The book of Judges, session number 3. We continue with chapter 1, verse 9, all the way until the end of the chapter. So looking at, you can read the whole chapter for yourself. I'm just going to highlight again. Verse 13, and Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it, and he gave him Achsah, his daughter, as wife. So in Joshua, session number 47, we really go into detail about how Othniel, the son of Caleb's younger brother, is a symbolic picture of the lion of the tribe of Judah. He is symbolizing Yeshua. He had the guts to go and take Kirjath Sefer. We talked about the meaning of Kirjath Sefer, about the meaning of the name of Othniel. I'm not going to repeat all of that, but then the daughter that Othniel, Caleb's daughter, she's the one that then represents the bride, and she wanted to have the southland, the springs of water. We talked about all these things. What the lion of El, Othniel, what the lion of El's bride wants is she wants the land where the early and the latter rains are falling. So it's absolutely amazing how in the names, in the Hebrew, we always see all these beautiful Messianic pictures. Joshua session number 47. If you've missed that, please go and do that. It falls in beautifully here with Judges chapter 1. Verse 16, and the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the south of Arat, and they went and dwelt there among the people of Judah. Very important and significant for the kingdom of God, to prove again how we have repeated Deuteronomy 4 so many times, that God will scatter into all the nations his people that has a heart for him and has an ear to hear him, and how out of all the nations people can join the tribes of Israel and become absorbed into one of the tribes, just like the mixed multitude that joined Israel out of Egypt and became part of the various tribes. Caleb himself became the leader of Judah, and he wasn't even from the tribe of Judah. But the moment we are rooted back and grafted back into the olive tree out of any Gentile nation, the moment we say, like Ruth, your God is now my God and your people is my people, and I leave my pagan ways behind and I join the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, you automatically become part of the people. And then, like with a mixed multitude into all the tribes standing around the mountain of Sinai, God talks to them and say, I'll be your God and you will be my people, all of you. He doesn't classify between Egyptian and Hebrew and all the other nations in the mixed multitude. And here also, we remember that the father-in-law of Moses was actually, originally not a believer. Exodus 3, verse 1. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law. He was a priest of Midian. He wasn't originally a believer at all. And yet here he joins the people, him and his people. He joins the people of God. He finally joins the camp of Moses full time. And they dwelt among the people in the southern parts, in the parts where Judah has their inheritance. And here we can see how the sheep of all nations must just come out of Babylon. Come out of their cities of palm trees, no matter how nice it is there, and come and join Israel, and come and live with Israel, become part of Israel. Verse 17, and Judah went with Simeon his brother, and they slew the Canaanites that inhabited Zephat, and utterly destroyed it. And then they changed the name of the city, Hormah. So it's amazing. Judah and Simeon, we saw in the previous session, now joined forces together, and they took back the promise that God has originally given, that this will be their land, and they will go out first, and they go first in line. And what has happened? Zephah in Hebrew is watchtower. watchtower. It's like a stronghold, a watchtower that was used by the enemy, that was used by the Canaanites, the Babylonians, used by the enemy, that was used by the Canaanites, the Babylonians, the pagans, the enemy of God's people who worships idols and false gods, the enemy of God. Now this system has watchtowers and strongholds. And here Judah comes with Shimeon, and they take the city and they kill all the Canaanites, and they change the name from the watchtower of the Canaanites, now becomes Hormah. And Hormah has the meaning of being devoted or being consecrated. So when we go into battle, we as the people of God, and we take over territory, grondgebied, when we work with God and we take back his promises one by one in our own lives, in our families, and eventually in this world, then all the watchtowers will fall, all the enemy's strongholds shall fall, and everything on this earth will become devoted and consecrated, made holy to God again. This is the work that Judah and Shimeon did. It's no different to the work that we are doing. We take the watchtowers and the strongholds of many sun god traditions and false worship systems and sins, transgressions against Torah that we've done. We go into repentance, and then we physically go, and sometimes some of us, as you know, go and burn a lot of stuff that was in our houses that wasn't supposed to be there. So you break down those strongholds, and then you make your life, your heart, and your home, you make it then consecrated and devoted to God. And this is the work of the warrior bride. Verse 18, also Judah took Gaza with the coast thereof, and Ashkelon with the coast thereof, and And Yahuwah was with Judah. Yahuwah will always be with Judah. If, like we saw in session 1, if Judah obeys the instructions of God. The people, Israel, went to God. Joshua is now dead. And they went to ask Yahuwah, what must we do? And Yahuwah was the one that said, okay, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to send Judah out first, blah, blah, blah. So while we are under our Yahuwah Tsefaot, the Lord of hosts, the captain of the army of God, as long as we are under his hand, under his authority, in his name, he will always be with us in all these fights and battles. And here we're going to see today that this is a physical battle, but it represents such a huge ancient battle against a specific type of enemy, all the way up to today. So Yahuwah type of enemy, all the way up to today. So Yahuwah was with Judah, and he drove out the inhabitants of the mountains, but could not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had chariots of iron. And they gave Hebron unto Caleb, as Moses said. And Caleb expelled from there the 3 sons of Anak. So let's look a little bit deeper into the mystery of these verses, because the world out there will immediately ask the question. Verse 19. So if Yahuwah was really with Judah, why were they able to drive out the inhabitants in the mountains, but they were not able to drive out the inhabitants of the valley? Because the people that lived in the valley had chariots of iron. So was God really with them? Did God really fulfill his promise? Maybe very important what's happening here. Because the moment somebody takes this verse and use it as a typical example of how people can misconstrue something that the Bible talks about, they can come out and say, okay, so, God cannot really compete with the technology, the superior technology that the valley dwellers had. Because, they had iron, they had chariots of iron. They are going to crush Judah. And, God is limited. Religion cannot compete with science and technology. God cannot compete with this valiant army. that is actually raising themselves up on chariots. And then the chariots come in full force, and the poor men of Judah are just standing there and their little swords. And there's nothing they can do against huge horses galloping. Here comes all these horses galloping over them, crushing them, defeating them. Oh, shame. No, sorry. God cannot do anything about that. I'm surprised. Because we see very clearly how God has and is going to deal with these chariots of iron. Let's first have a look at what God said in Joshua chapter 17, verse 18. Let's have a look. Is it God that couldn't be with Judah while they had to go and defeat the valley dwellers? Or was it Judah that just became too scared? Because if we can recall that what God said about these valley dwellers and about their iron chariots, then we have to look at this verse a little bit differently and take the focus off the fact that God is a breaker of his promise. God cannot compete with technology. God is too weak to help his people against iron chariots, because God very specifically said in Joshua 17 verse 18, the mountain shall be yours, for it is wood. You shall cut it down, and the outgoings of it shall be yours. You shall drive out the Canaanites, even if they have iron chariots, and even if they are strong. Do you see that in Joshua 17 verse 18? God said specifically, you go up and you'll take the mountain, and then in the valley, the going out of the mountain, you will also take that area. Don't be scared of the people there, although they're strong, and although they've got iron chariots, it doesn't matter. I am with you. So what this verse doesn't explain to us, it doesn't matter. I am with you. So what this verse doesn't explain to us is what actually happened here. And if we don't know God, and if we don't know the scriptures, then we will be that kind of people, those idiots that can just come up and say, oh, shame, no, God cannot compete with iron. Because we don't know God, and we don't know what he said before, and we don't even know what he's done before, and what he's going to do in the future. We have to remember that the Roman era was actually very significant when it came to iron, and Rome specifically overpowered all the other kingdoms and became the ruling kingdom of the world in the time of Yeshua, when they took over from the Greeks, when they defeated Alexander the Great and all his captains. Alexander the Great defeated the Medes and Persians. The Medes and Persians defeated Babylon. That whole statue that King Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of, the gold head and the silver arms and chest, the bronze hips and the iron legs. Because in the time of the iron legs, in the time after Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greeks and then Romans, it was Rome that ruled, and their element, their metal was iron. They are recognized by their iron. Everything they did was with iron. So when it comes to these Babylonians that has chariots of iron, just like Egypt had chariots of iron, it wasn't like the Romans invented, the chariots of iron, but they are represented by the chariots of iron because their kingdom, the Roman kingdom, is the exact same of the Babylonian kingdom. And the Babylonian kingdom is the exact same as the Egyptian kingdom. They all have that exact same sun god religion. And that is represented by the iron. And then the two legs of iron of Nebuchadnezzar's dream ends up in iron and clay that is mixed in the toes. And that's the end days. So as God did with the iron chariots in the Old Testament, that's what God is going to do with the iron kingdom in the end days. We have to see the prophecy in this. And although we as people depart from the confident way that we can go and overpower these valley dwellers in their iron chariots, they don't stand up against us. God said He promised us he will be with us, and although they're strong and they've got iron chariots, it doesn't matter. You will defeat them because I give them to you. And because we depart from that, it's not that God cannot keep his promises. We cause God promises. It's not God's fault. It is not for him to be blamed for this. It is not for him to be ridiculed or blasphemed because of this. It is again us as human people that cannot just continue to trust in him. So we see these early day battles getting battled out all the way to the end, where we also stand before these iron chariots of the Roman legal government system that has their roots in Babylon and Egypt, in the tree of knowledge. And we think these iron chariots are too much for us. But we remember, God defeated the iron chariots. He got them stuck in mud. Just like he says, when a massive enemy crowd approaches onto you, don't be scared. I'll send hornets upon them. When these huge iron chariots, everything in their way, come upon a little bit of mud, listen, they get stuck. God is with us in ways that sometimes boggle our minds. It's the same as with Elijah. He ran away from King Ahab. He ran in front of King Ahab's iron chariot, and he ran away for it. He ran faster than the horses. The iron chariot is not our problem. No matter how big their wheels are, they are not the problem. Our trust in God is what the problem is. And now the second problem we have here is because Judah refused to go into this valley and because they were afraid of these valley dwellers that had the iron chariots, because of their incomplete victory. They had victory in the mountain, but then they couldn't have victory in the valley. So their victory was incomplete. And because valley dwellers, these bottom feeders, these hyenas, remember the Amalekites that we discussed in detail? We also called them valley dwellers, the people that dwell in darkness, because on the mountain it's light, but here in the valley there's shadow. We talked about the Amalekites that's like hyenas from the back, coming slowly but surely. If you allow them, if you don't watch your back, then they will come and they will start biting, and eventually they'll start taking bites out of your flesh, and eventually they will devour you and take you over. And once your backside, the agterste linies, the backside of the camp is defeated, then they can take over the whole camp. And we talked about the valley of the shadow of death, where these guys are living and ruling and reigning. And because Judah was too afraid of the valley of shadow, then these valley dwellers, these bottom feeders, these vultures, these hyenas, these cowardly packs of dogs, slowly but surely started taking back everything again that God gave to Israel. And eventually they crush us as God's people, Israel as God's people. They were eventually crushed by these very same chariots of iron. They had the opportunity to crush it with the hand of God, being with him. But because they were afraid of the challenge to go into the valley of shadow, and they ran away and they made excuses, the shadows in the valley came back to haunt them and to eventually crush them again. We see that very clearly, to haunt them and to eventually crush them again. We see that very clearly. Let me take you to Judges chapter 4 in the future, where they started becoming disobedient to God. Judges 4 verse 3. And the children, okay, let's go to verse 2. Now, let's start with verse 1. And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of Yahuwah, and Yahuwah sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan. And the children of Israel cried unto Yahuwah. For Jabin, the king of Canaan, had 900 chariots of iron. And for 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. Isn't this amazing? Because we couldn't trust God, and we let the chariots of iron go free. They came back to come and crush us again and to put us in mighty oppression. The moment we started being disobedient to God, because just like a hyena, they are backbiting. They are waiting for you when you're at your weakest. And because you didn't defeat them when you were strong, when God was with you, because you didn't defeat them when you were strong, now that you are weak and disobedient and God has left you and God is leaving you to go through your own consequences of your sins, they will come and devour you. We mustn't be afraid of the valley of shadow. And each one of us, and me and you, we have many cycles in our lives where we have to go through valleys of shadows. And we know that even in the valley of the shadow of death, your rod and your staff is with me to comfort me, to teach me, to show me. But because we are afraid and we always want to try and avoid, because we're too scared, God can never really forge us and burn us in the fire to make us strong and to mold us like he can mold a hard piece of iron and forge it in the fire and then form it into a mighty weapon in his hand. He cannot do that with us. We mustn't shy away from spending time fighting the most difficult battles in the valley of shadow. Go into your deep, dark valleys. Allow God to take you in there, because I promise you, if you are going to trust God and willing to be at your weakest and at your most scared, I'm talking out of experience, there in the valley of shadow, God is going to teach you how to fight. He's going to teach you how to overcome. Time there and you understand the wisdom of the lesson that he's trying to teach you. He will bring you out. He will give you the victory. Whether it's in this life, over a specific matter in my life, or whether it's in the life after this, it doesn't matter. That victory will, I promise you, is going to come. We mustn't be scared of the valley dwellers or the shadows of the valley. So in the future there in chapter 4, we are still going to get there. But here the people of God was doing evil in his sight. And these chariots came back to come and crush them. And this is where Deborah, the woman of God, came into the picture. And then God said to both her and her commander that, you know what, this enemy, I will bring them to the valley with all their chariots, and you will be able to overcome them. Why? Why would Deborah be able to overcome? Because Deborah trusted Yahuwah. Let's remember what Yahuwah said. Let's not put the blame for the for Judah that wasn't able to drive out the valley dwellers with their chariots of iron. Let's not say that God cannot compete with technology and science and iron tools and all these great advances. Let's look at what God said in his law. Deuteronomy 20 verse 1. This is in the Torah. This is the Torah about making war and going into battle. Verse 1. When you go out to battle against your enemies, and you see their horses, and you see their chariots, and you see a people more than you, do not be afraid of them. For why? Yahuwah your Elohim is with you. Isn't it beautiful? Just like in Joshua 17 verse 18. Yes, they have chariots of fire. Listen to this. They have chariots of iron. So what? Don't walk in the fear of what your physical eyes can see. Walk in your spiritual, what is the word I want to use? We walk not by sight, but by faith. Because the spiritual faith, that which you cannot see in the physical, has in the hand of God already happened in the spirit. So like when Gehazi the servant of Elijah, said when the king's armies came upon them, he said, "Oh, they are too many. They're going to overpower us." And Elisha said, "He that is with us is more than they that are against us." And he prayed that God opened the eyes of Gehazi, and then he was able to see in the spirit all the chariots of the heavenly host that was surrounding Elijah at that time. We need to start walking in faith and not in sight, because God's law, his words that can never change, that can never fall to the ground, remember, has said, when you go into battle in my name and you see a people more than you with lots of chariots and horses, don't be afraid. Don't be scared to take it over, because I am with you. I am your God. He promised them that he will bring them out of Egypt and he will be with them along the way. And they were scared every single time. And remember how they didn't trust him anymore. The moment they got to the Red Sea, and the Egyptians came with all their chariots of iron and horsemen, then they got afraid again, and they said, "Oh, Moses, now do you want us to die here in the desert?" They totally forgot. Us to die here in the desert. They totally forgot about God's promises already so quickly when we go into a valley of shadow, into a difficult situation. We are so quick to forget that God said, "It's fine. Go through that. Even if the chariots come after you, I will drown them in the mud. Even if the chariots come up in front of you, I'm with you. You will defeat them. And you will take the valley just as you have taken the mountain." Exodus chapter 14, verse 17. And God said, "Behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will follow you. And I will get my honor upon Pharaoh. I will get my honor, says God, upon all his horses, upon all his chariots, upon all his horsemen, upon his entire army. All the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahuwah, I who have overpowered their Pharaoh, their chariots, and their horsemen." Oh, this is for me absolutely beautiful. And here I want to go back and remind you of the Pesach 2022 Bible studies we did together, where we said, where we looked at Jeremiah 12, if running with a horseman has made you tired, if you're tired already, how are you going to compete with the chariots, with the horsemen? We looked at this in detail, and we have to understand that the little bit of fighting with the foot soldiers is just preparing us to fight against the chariots of iron, this Roman Babylonian end time persecution that's lying ahead, in the shadows of the valley that's lying ahead. We need to fight every battle to make war like God promised in Psalm 18. He will teach us our right arms. He will teach our right arms to make war. But we need to believe his promises that he's with us. We mustn't be scared when we come down the mountain after we've had victory, and now suddenly we come to the valley and we're too scared. We mustn't be scared as we just came out of Egypt in victory, and we come to the Red Sea and now we are defeated. We mustn't give up when God said he'll be with us. Even to the death, he'll be with us. So we have to stand up for him and not run away or be scared to face anything that he brings on our paths. All right, let me finish with verse 20 of Judges chapter 1. So Hebron was given to Caleb, and like Moses said, and Caleb expelled the 3 sons of the Anak. So Anak, a lot of you must have heard about the Annunaki. If you've ever read, what's his name, Yochanan Shachin, or whatever his name is very popular these days in the churches, where they teach that, there has been other gods, and Yahweh is just the one brother, and then you've got, I don't even want to go into all of that, but the Annunaki religion, according to the world and many churches, is actually an older religion than Yahweh. Well, they call him Yahweh, the bad god. Lucifer was the good god in Eden, and Annunaki was the good brother. Yahweh is the bad brother, and all these. Sheesh. Anyway, so if you've ever watched Ancient Aliens and all these things, then we can see that, listen, the Bible is not ignorant of any of these things that you guys all talk about. You say that Bible believers are just fairy tale believers. Funny how the mythology and all the ancient alien visitation on earth before time began, how all your bull dust is already written up in the chronicles of the book of Judges and before. We've learned about the Anunnaki all through the wilderness journey. And these ancient aliens, they weren't ancient aliens, man. They were the Nephilim seed. And that's why it's important to do the two tree studies from the book of Genesis, so you can understand Genesis 6 and understand where these so-called ancient alien come from, and all these so-called ancient sun gods that was before Yahweh. Ancient scrolls of the Mesopotamians and Mesopotamians and the Chaldeans and the Babylonians and the Egyptians. A lot of their religion was written up in scrolls and stuff long before Moses wrote the book of Genesis. So just because one of these religions has older books than what the books of Moses are, doesn't mean that their religion existed before Genesis, or before Yahweh, or before the God of Moses and Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It just means their stuff has been written up before, because flippin' hell, Israel was in Egypt, in the bounds of the Egyptian pharaoh for 400 years. They never had time to go sit down and write nothing, man. They were working like slaves. They were oppressed. But the God of Genesis is the only original God. And then as Cain killed Abel, and Cain went and he, went into his own direction, and he started, a whole new thing over there. And eventually we've got the people of Genesis 6 that mixed with these fallen angel seed serpent kingdom, and they had these various sun god religions and new age occult, mysterious, esoteric, demonic things that came out of there. They had all these religions, and these were all seeded. The seed of the serpent tree was in all these religions. And of course, the serpent is nobody else than Lucifer himself, who was a covering cherub in heaven before he fell. So he knew what the kingdom of God is about. He knew before he fell. So he knew what the kingdom of God is about. He knew the Son of God. He knew it will be birthed from a virgin. So he had his whole pagan false religions come in play and be written up long before the time of Yeshua. And that's why a lot of people these days say that Christianity with Jesus being birthed on the 25th of December is all just a copy of the original mother-child religions that was even before the time of Moses. That's why they can say that. And, I agree with him when it comes to the Christian church. But when it comes to the biblical Bible religion, the God who has a son and who brought the son into flesh upon this earth through a virgin, has existed with his plan in Genesis 3 verse 15, long before the Chaldeans or the Babylonians or the Tower of Babel or the fallen angels or the tree of knowledge. So God, Yahuwah, Yotevave, has always been the only true God. All these other false gods, whether you want to call them sun gods or aliens or Anunnaki or whatever, all these other really ancient gods only existed after the Tower of Babel dispersed them with their knowledge of Genesis their deception of the fallen angel Nephilim's seed. Now they are scattered into all the world, driven into 70 different directions, starting 70 different languages and 70 different religions that has a little bit of the original religion mixed in their Babylonian religion. You understand all of that. I know you do, because you've come a long way with these Bible studies. We're going to read one final verse in the book of Jeremiah, and then chapter 51. Because besides the fact that God is going to destroy all the chariots of iron, even this whole false god, Antichrist, Babylonian, Nimrod, serpent system is also represented by these chariots of iron. And I want to end this session with a final promise. God promised in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Joshua and in Judges that He's with us and we will be able to overpower the chariots of iron. But because we don't overpower them, they come back and then they crush us. And then, like in Judges 4, people turn back to God, and then He brings them Deborah and Balak, and they can overpower the continuous cycle because we don't keep our trust in God. We don't endure to the end. And that's why God had to continuously make more promises for the future on what He's going to do with the iron and with a false god that's represented by that iron. Jeremiah 51 verse 21. And with thee I will break in pieces the horse and the rider. With thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider. Let's go back to verse 19. The portion of Jacob is not like these, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of God's inheritance. Yahuwah of hosts is his name. We know that's Yeshua. Israel is his inheritance. You are my weapons of war, for with you I will break in pieces the nations, and with thee I will destroy kingdoms. God is talking to Yeshua, the Lord of hosts. He is also the inheritance of God. He is also the one with which He will break the nations and destroy all these Babylonian, Annunaki, Nephilim kingdoms. With thee He will break the chariots of iron. With thee also I will break in pieces man and woman, young and old, young man and maiden. I will break in pieces the shepherd and the flock, the husbandman and the yoke of oxen. And he continues, and he says in verse 24 of Jeremiah 51, I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all the evil that they have done in Zion in your sight. Beautiful. I think there's so much more. Even now, just reading the next verses of Jeremiah, I want to continue, but you can read the whole chapter for yourself. What beautiful end-time prophecies. We trust in God, Father Yahuwah. We trust in you. You've broken the iron before. You've broken the iron, the hard hearts of iron that we had. You made it soft. And now we trust you, although we're scared, to break the final battle that lies ahead. The final two legs of the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar. We trust that your little rock, your stone that comes loose from the mountain in Daniel 2, will hit this statue at his feet, and it will break apart the legs of iron and the rest of the statue, because you are with us, just like you've been with Judah here in Judges chapter